is Tuesday, January 6, 2026 at 10 a.m. My name is Jeff Houston, and I am president of the board. We will start by calling the roll of board members. Mr. Miller.
Here.
Ms. Bittner.
Here.
Mr. Whiston.
Here.
Ms. Ferris.
Here.
Mr. George.
Here.
Mr. Bukta.
Here.
Mr. Grimm.
Here.
Mr. Hubert.
Here.
Also present are Executive Director Stephen Shearholt, Chief Legal Counsel Sharon Mark Moore, and Chief Pharmacist Jenny Way. First item on the agenda are proposed rules 4729:9-1-01.1 and 4729:9-1-01.2 the Ohio Revised Code. Prior to our discussion, I would like to turn things over to the board's Chief Legal Counsel to provide a brief background on the board's scheduling authority. Ms. Martin Moore.
Thank you. Good morning, board members. Just to clarify, those are the rules related to the administrative code, not the revised code. Pursuant to section 3719.44 of the Ohio Revised Code, the board may add or transfer a compound, mixture, preparation, or substance to Schedule 1 when it appears that there is a high potential for abuse, that it has no accepted medical use in treatment in this state, or that it lacks accepted safety for use in treatment under medical supervision. In making a determination to add an unscheduled compound, the board is required to consider the following 8 criteria. 1, the actual or relative potential for abuse. 2, the scientific evidence of the pharmacological effect of the substance. 3, the state of current scientific knowledge regarding the substance. 4, the history and current pattern of abuse. 5, the scope, duration, and significance of abuse. 6, the risk to the public health. 7, the potential of the substance to produce psychic or psychological dependence liability. And 8, whether the substance is an immediate precursor. I will now turn things over to Chief Pharmacist Jenny Way, who will review the 8-factor analyses for metrogenine-related compounds and metrogenine.
Good morning. I will begin with the 8-factor analysis for metrogenine-related compounds. As you may recall, this is a follow-up to the emergency rule the board adopted last month. I will review the 8-factor analysis. First factor, the actual or relative potential for abuse. Both the FDA and the EU have determined that metrogenine-related compounds binds to the mu opioid. Kratom commercialization has led to the modification of its main ingredient, metrogenine. This includes products available containing the psychoactive ingredient 7-hydroxymetrogenine, known as 7-OH, metrogenine pseudoindoxyl, MP, and dihydro 7-hydroxymetrogenine, or MGM15. 7-OH and MP are approximately 10 and 100 times more potent than metrogenine, respectively. In various preclinical studies, 7-OH has demonstrated greater potency than the classical opioids. For example, 7-OH produces respiratory depression with more than 3-fold greater potency than morphine. And as Kratom's commercialization has grown, so too have the numbers of adverse events reported to the poison control centers. From January 1st to July 31st of 2025, poison control centers in the United States received 1,690 reports of exposure cases involving Kratom, a number that already surpasses the total for all of 2024. Kratom is illegal in 33 countries, including Malaysia, where it is found naturally. It is also banned in several states, including Alabama, Arkansas, Indiana, Vermont, Rhode Island, Louisiana, and Wisconsin. The second factor, scientific evidence of the pharmacological effect of the substance. Regulators in both the European Union, EU, and the US have determined that metrogenine-related compounds, such as 7-OH, bind to the same receptors in the brain, the mu-opioid receptors, as opioids. Specifically, FDA notes that 7-OH produces respiratory depression, physical dependence, and withdrawal symptoms characteristics of classical opioids, such as the morphines, fentanyls, oxycodones, and hydrocodones. Additionally, 7-OH is metabolized to metrogenine pseudoindoxil, or MP, a compound that also demonstrates very high potency at mu-opioid receptors and contributes to the overall opioid-like effects. A 2025 study examining the respiratory depression of morphine and 7-OH found that both induce significant respiratory depression and could be reversed using naloxone. The authors conclude that 7-OH may expose individuals to similar risk as classical opioids. The reports from individuals on Reddit, outlined in your Appendix A of the 8-factor analysis, demonstrate that opioid-like properties associated with metrogenine-related products. For example, one user reported experience with the purported 7-OH products that were, quote, reminiscent of some of my best oxy experiences. Medications approved by the FDA to treat opioid use disorders have been used to treat individuals experiencing substance use disorders associated with these metrogenine-related compounds. The third factor, the state of current scientific knowledge regarding the substance. Little to no clinical dosing research exists for any metrogenine-related products. No metrogenine-related compound has progressed past the phase 1 clinical trials. Metrogenine-related compounds have not undergone any randomized placebo-controlled studies that's necessary to demonstrate the efficacy for any condition while minimizing the significant risk associated with it. Clinical presentations of metrogenine-related compounds include euphoria, sedation, respiratory depression, and opioid-like withdrawal syndromes, with users acknowledging its significant addiction potential. And as stated previously, regulators in the EU and the US have determined that metrogenine-related compounds such as 7-OH bind to the same receptor in the brain as opioids. The fourth factor, the history and current pattern of abuse. It is not unusual for the preparation of metrogenine-related compounds in the US to differ significantly from traditional kratom preparations. Where isolates and extracts are widely available in the United States, kratom was traditionally made from boiling tea leaves, fresh leaves. The impacts are notable as increased demand, including the 7-OH and MP products, has coincided with a wide variety of product preparations, such as gummies, organic extracts, vapes, liquid shots, and tablets. In fact, these websites stress the ease of consuming semi-synthetic products over kratom. The U.S. Poison Control Centers report multiple cases of 7-OH exposures resulting in serious adverse outcome this year. However, the number of adverse events related to 7-OH and other metrogenine-related compounds is most likely underreported due to the lack of self-reporting among individuals, and the fact that the National Poison Data System codes for reporting cases of 7-OH exposures were only added earlier this year. The Ohio Substance Abuse Monitoring, or OSAM, network report from January 2025 found that kratom use associated with opioid use, as the substance reportedly has similar effects, and kratom is reportedly advertised to help mitigate opioid withdrawal symptoms and stop opioid use. Nationally, the FDA notes that the number of fatal overdose cases by the Drug Enforcement Administration toxicology testing program, in which one or more of these substances were detected from 2023 to 2025, are approximately threefold higher than for the years 2019 through 2022, coinciding with a more recent entry of metrogenine-related products in the marketplace. The fifth factor, scope and duration and significance of abuse. As stated previously, Metrogenine preparation in the U.S. may differ significantly from traditional kratom preparations with a wide array of product preparations available, such as the gummies, concentrated extracts, vapes, liquid shots, and tablets. The National Drug Early Warning System, or NDEWS, conducts real-time national surveillance to detect emerging drug trends. And according to the NDEWS, Reddit users report the following regarding to Metrogenine-related compounds. The users describe withdrawal symptoms from concentrated alkaloid products as more severe than traditional kratom leaf, some comparing them to pharmaceutical opioid withdrawal. Limited awareness exists about the pharmacological differences between the traditional kratom and these novel derivatives, leading to an unexpected overdose-like symptoms, including respiratory depression concerns. The Ohio Substance Abuse Monitoring, or OSAM network, report from the January 2025 found that kratom use associated with opioid use. As the substance reported has similar effects, the kratom is reportedly advertised to help mitigate those opioid withdrawal symptoms and to help stop opioid use. While Metrogenine-related compounds are sold in vape shops, gas stations, and other brick-and-mortar retailers, there is a growing market for these products on the dark web. And these compounds are sometimes offered with other controlled substances, such as Suboxones, Adderalls, and psilocybin. Customers on the dark web also warn of the use of these 7-OH products, specifically stating, quote, "This is the big boy stuff, more akin to the oxycodones and the Vicodin." The sixth factor, the risk to the public health. In Ohio, a growing number of deaths associated with kratom, which contains a main active constituent of metrogenine and 7-hydroxymetrogenine, have been reported, indicating that these compounds are a risk to public health. From 2019 to 2024, the Ohio Department of Health reported that at least 2 deaths in which kratom is listed as a cause of death. Several forensic cases of opioid-like death with lung congestions and high post-mortem metrogenine blood concentrations, and with no obvious alternative causes of the death, have now been reported. There is also a report of naloxone being successfully used to treat and reverse kratom intoxication. There are also documented cases of metrogenine-related compounds by expecting mothers, resulting in neonatal abstinence syndrome for the newborns. These cases are particularly concerning, given that the promotion of these products as safe alternatives to opioids may well persuade expecting mothers to consume metrogenine-related compounds in order to avoid the adverse impacts of opioids to the unborn child. The evidence supports the position that these ingredients in metrogenine-related products available to consumers are void of robust quality control. And in one study, the products clearly labeled as containing the single alkaloid 7-OH all contain, quote, contain at least detectable amounts of metrogenine and metrogenine pseudoindoxil, as well as some other kratom alkaloids. So without the permanent scheduling of metrogenine-related compounds, these products will be widely available for purchase by adolescents upon the expiration of the emergency rule 4729:9-101 period 1 of the Ohio Administrative Code. A 2025 study examining the respiratory depression of morphine and 7-OH found that both induce significant respiratory depression and can be reversed using the naloxone. As stated before, the authors conclude that 7-OH may expose individuals to similar risk as classic opioids. And lastly, the labeling of metrogenine-related compounds also highlights the risk posed by these compounds. For example, one label lists death as a serious side effect. The seventh factor, potential of substance to produce psychic and physiologic dependence liability. A review of several studies conducted by the FDA found that metrogenine-related compounds, such as 7-OH, have a high affinity for opioid receptors and functional activity as an agonist at these receptors. Analysis of 329 posts to Reddit online forum Kratom users between 2020 and 2022 reviewed the common themes of problematic use of these Kratom extracts, leading to use disorder development and withdrawal. Even the product labeling for Metrogenine-related compounds also includes statements acknowledging the ability of these compounds to produce psychic and physiological dependence, including avoid if you have a history of substance use or an abuse. This product may be highly addictive. This product contains kratom. Kratom may be addictive. Products not intended for daily use. Regular use can lead to physical and or psychological dependence, addiction, and withdrawal symptoms may occur upon discontinuation. Do not take more than 2 per day for 3 consecutive days. Exceeding this dose may lead to addiction and other deleterious effects. And lastly, products containing Metrogenine-related compounds are being marketed in formulations that resemble other commonly misused controlled substances. For example, manufacturers are producing 7-OH products in tablet, quote, bars, which is common slang for Xanax, a benzodiazepine and a controlled substance. 8th factor, whether the substance is an immediate precursor. Excuse me. 7-OH is a precursor to other Metrogenine-related compounds. These include metrogenine pseudoindoxyl and MGM-15 or dihydro-7-hydroxymetrogenine. Metrogenine-related compounds are temporarily classified as Schedule I controlled substances under the Rule 4729:9-101.1 of the Ohio Administrative Code. And this concludes the review of the 8-factor criteria for Metrogenine-related compounds.
Any questions for either Ms. Martin Moore or Ms. Way?
Under the 6 criteria factor, there's some stats relative to death and related to trading and the overdose rate in comparison to other substances like alcohol, cannabis. Where does kratom fall into comparison to death, ratio of death? We have any stats in comparison to those others?
I don't have the stats to comparison, but I'm sure that there is reported deaths as experienced, as I mentioned here, from 2029 to 2024, that the Ohio Department of Health did report at least 202 deaths in which kratom is listed as a cause. Now, I do not know currently right off the top of my head what the death is for alcohol or with other substances such as fentanyl, but there have been reported deaths associated because it does affect the human body like opioids.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Is there a motion to find that after a review of all available data, the board finds Metrogenine-related compounds have a high potential for abuse, have no accepted medical use and treatment in this state, and that they lack accepted safety for use and treatment under medical supervision? Based on these findings, the board hereby authorizes the filing of Rule 4729:9-1.1 of the Administrative Code, the Common Sense Initiative, and to classify as a Schedule I opiate or opiate derivative any material, compound, mixture, or preparation that contains Metrogenine-related compounds. Is there a Mr. Grimm, is there a second? Mr. George, any discussion? Those in favor? Eight zero. I will now recognize Ms. Way for a review of the 8-factor analysis for Metrogenine.
Excuse me. Thank you, board member. And good morning. I will begin with the 8-factor analysis for Metrogenine. As you may recall, this is a follow-up to a request by the governor to review the safety of Metrogenine, which is the primary psychoactive component in Kratom. First factor, actual or relative potential for abuse. Kratom has a long history of traditional use in Southeast Asia, with the use of its leaf or extracts typically ingested orally for the treatment of pain and to aid in the performance of agricultural labor. These effects have been attributed to Metrogenine, which acts as a partial agonist at the human mu opioid receptors. Metrogenine accounts for up to 66% of the alkaloid content in Kratom. The effects of Kratom in humans are dose-dependent, with small doses producing a cocaine-like stimulation, while larger amounts cause morphine-like sedative narcotic effects. The FDA confirms that no marketer has sought to develop a drug that includes Kratom in the US, and Metrogenine is not generally recognized as safe by the FDA. Further, the World Health Organization verifies that Kratom and its alkaloids have never been licensed for therapeutic use. Kratom is illegal in 33 countries, including Malaysia, where it is found naturally. It is also banned in several states, including Alabama, Arkansas, Indiana, Vermont, Rhode Island, Louisiana, and Wisconsin. A new law in Connecticut, effective October 1st of 2025, requires the State Department of Consumer Protection, or DCP, to designate Kratom and 7-hydroxymetrogenine as Schedule I controlled substances. On December 10th of 2025, Connecticut's DCP issued a notice of decision to move forward with the scheduling. And despite its lack of approved use, Kratom and its primary alkaloid, Metrogenine, have been used to self-treat conditions such as chronic pain, fatigue, psychiatric disorders, including substance use disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. For example, the Ohio Substance Abuse Monitoring Network, or the OSAM, report about the availability of Kratom in Ohio and its marketing towards individuals who are experiencing opioid use disorder. While others report using Kratom for relaxation, euphoria, or to enhance performance, the end result for many consumers of these products have been the inability to control their use. The following is a comment submitted to the Ohio Board by the consumers of products whose manufacturers profess are natural, herbal, or Kratom. Someone very close to me began using Kratom, thinking that it was safe, natural way to manage stress and pain without opiates. Over time, I watched it take over their life. They became anxious, detached, angry, and sick when they tried to stop. It broke my heart to see how something so easy to buy could cause such deep harm, not only to them, but to everyone who loves them. He would pass out while alone with our 22-month-old. He has been hospitalized with heart problems from the use. We both have missed work. It has damaged our relationship, careers, children, and every aspect of our life. A 2025 study conducted interviews with 395 Kratom users and classified users into 4 distinct categories. 2 classes include people using Kratom for self-treatment of chronic pain or substance use disorder and comprise approximately 52% of the respondents. The other 2 classes, about 48% of the respondents, reported using Kratom to, quote, get high. The study also notes that individuals who reported using Kratom to, quote, get high and who had the highest probability of Kratom use disorder were more likely to characterize Kratom as, quote, habit-forming, addictive, problematic, and inconsistent in its effect, unquote. The second factor, scientific evidence of pharmacological effect of the substance. The European Monitoring Center for Drugs and Addiction, EMCDDA, notes that Kratom and its related compounds are selective and full agonists of the mu opioid. The effects of the Kratoms in the humans are dose-dependent, as I mentioned earlier, with the small doses producing stimulant effects like cocaine, and the larger amounts causes sedative narcotic effects like morphine. One study conducted Kratom users in Malaysia found high rates of severe Kratom dependence among the regular users. More than half of the regular users, those using more than 6 months, reported severe Kratom dependence, while 45% show moderate Kratom dependence. The study authors also noted that regular users who consume 3 or more glasses of Kratom per day had, quote, higher odds of developing severe Kratom dependence withdrawal symptoms and an inability to control Kratom craving. Medications approved by the FDA to treat opioid use disorder have been used to treat individuals experiencing Kratom use disorder. Case examples have been cited through medical literature to support the use of buprenorphine and naloxone to treat Kratom use disorder, KUD. There are also examples of treating Kratom withdrawal symptoms with medication such as clonidine and hydroxyzine that are often used off-label to manage opioid withdrawal. Third factor, the state of current scientific knowledge regarding the substance. Little clinical dosing research exists for Kratom and its primary alkaloid metrogenine. Neither Kratom nor metrogenine have progressed past phase 1 of the clinical trials. It should be noted that most drugs, nearly 70%, that undergo phase 1 clinical trials succeed to phase 2 clinical trials. It is not until phase 2 that research on substance ability to treat a condition and its side effects are studied. These usually occurs with several hundred subjects who have a disease or conditions in question. Despite the increasing availability of human in vitro and in vivo animals data, the rigorous fundamental information about the pharmacokinetics of Kratom alkaloids in humans still remains limited. Metrogenine has not undergone randomized placebo-controlled studies necessary to demonstrate its efficacy for any condition while minimizing the significant risks associated with the compound. FDA has warned consumers not to use Kratom because of the risk of serious adverse events, including liver toxicity, seizures, and substance use disorder. And in rare cases, deaths have been associated with Kratom use, as confirmed by medical examiner or toxicology reports. The fourth factor, the history and current patterns of abuse. Kratom has been used for centuries in Southeast Asia by laborers for its stimulant and analgesic effects. Despite the long history of use originating in Southeast Asia, the widespread commercialization of Kratom and its primary alkaloid metrogenine is a recent development. Both product sold as vegetation, and those labeled as ground vegetation have been found to contain several times the amount of metrogenine than actual Kratom leaf material. And as outlined in Figure 1 of the 8-factor analysis, manufacturers of products that market it as all natural and unadulterated acknowledge that the extracts are several times greater than the plant from which they start. In fact, postmortem toxicology findings from patients who use Kratom had concentrations, quote, higher than those reported in Thai individuals consuming traditional Kratom leaf without adverse effects. And as Kratom commercialization has grown, so too have the numbers of adverse events reported to the poison control centers. From January 1st to July 31st of 2025, poison control centers in the United States received 1,690 reports of exposures cases involving the Kratom, a number that has already surpassed the total for all of 2020. And reports of Kratom exposures have been associated with opioid toxicities, including seizures, agitations, and death. Access to metrogenine can be further abused when it is isolated from Kratom leaves. It can then be synthetically transformed into 7-OH and other semi-synthetic opioids, some with significantly enhanced mu-opioid receptor activities. The fifth factor, the scope and the durations, the significance of abuse. Although there is apparent consensus that the number of Americans who use Kratom is in the millions, the precise number of those who use is more nebulous. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration has estimated that in 2021, 1.7 million Americans aged 12 and older use Kratom. More recently, Harvard Medical School estimated that between 2 and 15 million Americans may be using Kratom. The Ohio Substance Abuse Monitoring, OSAM Network, reports from January 2025 found that Kratom use is associated with opioid use, as the substance reportedly has a similar effect, and the Kratom is reportedly advertised to help with mitigate opioid withdrawal symptoms and to stop the opioid use. They state in their advertisement on the Kratom Facebook page, advertise as a way to get off the opioids, certain kind of opioids. Kratom has similar withdrawal symptoms as heroin. Kratom mimics the effect of heroin, but the POs or the parole officers are aware of it now. OSAM also reports that Kratom is desirable to some because it is not always included on drug screens, unlike the other controlled substances. Additionally, public comments received by the Board of Pharmacy from the family and friends of Kratom users report issues related to relapse by those in recovery, significant weight loss, inability to cease use despite the adverse impact on the personal relationships and finances, also cause liver damage and heart issues. The sixth factor, the risk to the public health. FDA has warned consumers not to use Kratom because of the risk of serious adverse events, including the liver toxicity, seizures, and substance use disorder. In rare cases, death have been associated with Kratom use, as confirmed by the medical examiner and toxicology report. And in Ohio, a growing number of deaths associated with Kratom have been reported, indicating that it is a risk to the public health. From 2019 to 2024, the Ohio Department of Health reported at least 202 deaths in which Kratom is listed as the cause of the death. Several forensic cases of opioid-like deaths with lung congestions and high postmortem metrogenine blood concentration level with no obvious alternative causes of death have now been reported. There is also a report of naloxone being successfully used to treat and to reverse Kratom intoxication. States who were previously at the forefront of Kratom regulations are now reversing course. For example, Utah developed a regulatory scheme that allowed continued access of Kratom over the counter. Despite age restrictions and limited alkaloid access, overdose deaths related to Kratom and treatment for Kratom use disorder still persisted. The Utah State Medical Examiner reported nearly 160 Kratom-related deaths over a 5-year period. While most of those overdoses involved polysubstance use, the state saw almost 50% as many Kratom-only deaths in the most recent 12-month reporting period in Utah, as Utah has had seen since 2014. Consequently, the Utah legislature proposed to add all alkaloids from Kratom and their analogs to the state's list of controlled substances in November of 2025. The bill's sponsor originally voted to regulate Kratom in 2019, but now sees the Kratom in all forms as a dangerous opioid, masquerading as a supplement. There are also documented cases of Kratom use by expecting mothers, resulting in neonatal abstinence syndrome of these newborns. These cases are particularly concerning, given that promotion of Kratom is supposed to be a safe alternative to opioids. They may well persuade expecting mothers to consume Kratom products to avoid the adverse impacts of opioids on their unborn child. Kratom products are also advertised with misleading statements and information to provide the sense that it is a safe alternative to controlled substances. For example, one manufacturer states, quote, "Feel better with only Kratom products studied in clinical trials," and quote, "US made in our FDA registered space in Florida," unquote. As indicated previously, Metrogenine has never successfully made it to phase 2 clinical trials. Evidence supports the position that the ingredients in Kratom available to consumers are void of robust controls. In 2019, FDA conducted laboratory testing in 30 different Kratom products from a variety of sources. The analysis found, quote, "significant levels of lead and nickel at concentrations that exceed safe exposure for oral daily drug intake. A third-party analysis of Kratom products also found samples that exceeded daily exposure limits for lead. The authors noted that, quote, non-extract products, powders, capsules, tablets, generally contain greater concentrations of the elemental impurities than extract products or the soda preparation. In 2018, the CDC investigated a multi-state outbreak of Salmonella infections linked to Kratom. The agency reported that a total of 199 people were infected with the outbreak strains of Salmonella across 41 states, including 7 individuals in Ohio. Additionally, there are no age verification requirements to prevent the sale of Kratom products to children. This raised serious concerns about the impact of these compounds and access, the compounds on the developing brain and the access to these compounds. The seventh factor, potential of substance to produce psychic or psychological dependence of liability. Cases of dependence to Kratom have been documented in the last several decades. Metrogenine has agonist activity at the mu-opioid receptors like opioids and may lead to dependence and addiction. Further, the European Union drug agencies, FDA, DEA, Mayo Clinic, and others agree that individuals can develop a dependence on Kratom, to Kratom. According to the FDA, cases of Kratom-related SUDs have also been observed. And in these cases, these individuals met certain criteria for SUD, including using Kratom for longer than intended, using more Kratom than intended, having cravings for Kratom, continuing to use Kratom despite adverse consequences, increasing the amount of Kratom use to produce the same effect, and experiencing withdrawal symptoms when Kratom use was stopped. In-person interviews with convenient samples of long-term daily oral Kratom users in Southeast Asia find up to 3/4 reporting withdrawal symptoms after cessation. And lastly, it is not unusual for Kratom manufacturers themselves to acknowledge the same risk of developing a dependence to Kratom. I had mentioned earlier, one such acknowledgement provides, quote, sensing the need to up your serving size or not feeling the expected results, a tolerance break might be do the trick. Take 2 to 3 days off from Kratom, then start at a lower serving size. Despite warnings that Kratom may be habit-forming and should not be consumed every day, testimonials posted by Kratom manufacturers encourage daily use for relief of discomfort, stating, quote, this is my favorite kind. It is the best for relieving daily discomfort in your mind or your body. The eighth factor, whether the substance is an immediate. Metrogenine is a known precursor to metrogenine-related compounds, which are Scheduled I controlled substances in Ohio. According to the European Union Drug Agency, quote, the chemical total synthesis reported for several Kratom alkaloids are too complex to be used for economic production of any of these compounds. However, metrogenine can serve as a chemical precursor to the more potent 7-hydroxymetrogenine, unquote. That concludes my eight-factor analysis.
Does the board have any questions for either Ms. Sway? Is there a motion to find that after review of all available data, the board finds metrogenine has a high potential for abuse, has no accepted medical use and treatment in the state, and that it lacks accepted safety for use and treatment under medical. Based on these findings, hereby authorizes the filing of Rule 4729:9-1-01.2 of the Administrative Code with the Common Sense Initiative and the Joint Committee on Agency Rule Review to classify as a Schedule I opiate or opiate derivative any material, compound, mixture, or preparation that contains metrogenine. Mr. Grant, is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor? 8-0. Having concluded the first item on the agenda, the board will now take a brief recess and reconvene in the Rife Tower hearing room.